Hi.
Hello.
I'm Brad.
And I'm Kelsey.
And we're BK Book Club.
Whoop, whoop.
Start off by saying Happy New Year. This is our first new recording since the year has changed.
Yes.
We took a nice little 2-week break.
Yeah.
Because I went to Denver.
And it was
the holidays,
Christmas and New Year's and
it just worked out that way.
all that jazz.
We read an awful book. I don't want to say
There
awful.
was parts, it was just hard, especially in the beginning.
I think and we'll get into it obviously, but we read Hooked from
Emily McIntire.
And it's a part of the Never After series that she did,
Mm-hmm.
which the idea behind it got me excited. And actually some of my notes, you can tell in the beginning that I was into it, and then you can tell when I switched. It took a left turn. I think that my problem, when I was explaining it to my roommates, is it makes me think of like a B-rated horror movie. That you're like, ooh, the story is a great idea, but the delivery and the process was not there.
Yeah, and I think my issue wasn't even like really the storyline, even though it was predictable, but a lot of things are.
Yeah, that's why I said,
especially for me.
Like I said, decent story. Like the idea and the concept behind it was a good idea, and I liked where she went with it, but
I just didn't like how the male character talked about.
I actually make a comment about that at one point. I'm like, is this
like,
how women think men are?
Well, and like, to be fair, in the beginning of the book, she warns us, like, the main character's a villain, blah, 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 blah. And my issue wasn't with, like...
There was a disclaimer, too.
The mob aspects of it. It was literally the, like, I own her, and she's my property, and I don't like that.
I could 100% date a villain as long as he wasn't telling me that he owned me.
Yeah, or calling me his pet.
Yeah. Oh, the
I hated it.
Really...
I hated it.
So in this episode, we're going to go through chapters 1 through 25, and then we will be recording a second episode that will have the remainder of the book. I can tell you that episode will probably be relatively short because neither one of us took notes because we literally, I don't know about you.
I was just cringing a lot.
I don't think I actually read through the entire chapters. I just skimmed because I was like, I already know what's going to happen. I already knew what happened. Yeah. And I was like, I think my biggest qualm about this book, in complete contrast to the previous book or the previous series that we read, is that there is zero character development in this.
Yeah,
you don't fall in love with any of the characters. There's no like.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of feel a little bit sorry, and you kind of start to feel a little bit of something, and then you're like, never mind, it's gone.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, how was your New Year's?
Good.
What did you end up doing last week? Not this past week, the week before, sorry.
New Year's Eve, I worked, and then I went home and watched Wicked.
Which is really funny because she was supposed to do something with me. Oh, no, that was Christmas Eve, sorry.
I was like...
Never mind, just kidding.
You were in Denver.
That's right.
And we talked on the 30th.
Yeah, we talked on the 30th.
Well, I think it was already the 31st for you.
Yes.
It was past midnight.
Yeah, because I was up watching Wicked.
On Christmas Eve, yes, I also worked, and everybody at work was like, oh yeah, last year we got off between like 6 and 7. So it's like, okay, cool.
It did not happen.
Did not happen. We were so busy.
Did we record that Thursday or that Saturday? After Christmas.
Oh, we did record after Christmas.
Yeah.
So this is, you already know.
Yeah, so what did you do for the week of New Year's?
Of New Year's, yeah. Worked.
Did you do anything on New Year's Eve?
I worked and watched Wicked. I just said that. On the 30th, I went to a comedy show with my sister, Josh Johnson, at Helium Club. It was really good. His openers were really great.
Good.
Yeah, everything was wonderful. But yeah, I really haven't done a lot. You know me, I don't really...
Yeah.
I like to be at home.
I ended up having a really good time in Denver. I left on Sunday, the 29th, flew out there, instantly met up with my best friend's other best friend who happens to live in Chicago. So my best friend drove out to Denver, I think the second week of December, spent the week there, and then drove to Chicago to spend Christmas with friends and family because that's where he's from. And then on the 28th, he drove back to Denver and got there on the 29th, picked me up from the airport on the 30th, while bringing his friend that drove back from Chicago with him to the airport. So I got to meet her at the airport. We had a cocktail as soon as I landed, which was awesome. And then he and I just day drank. Like, we went and hit a couple of places.
Love it.
And then
I love a good day drink.
And then Monday, we didn't really do much of anything. We just kind of chilled. And
that's when you called me and were like, I've been trying to get Wicked for an
like,
hour now.
I know it's coming out and I'm waiting until it's out. But so I ended up watching Wicked on Monday night. And then Tuesday was New Year's Eve. We ended up, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, so Monday night I lied. Monday night we did do something. We ended up doing a cocktail hour at my best friend's boyfriend's house, where I got to meet a bunch of his friends and like people that he hangs out with, which was cool. I made friends with a couple of people while I was there. And then on New Year's Eve, some of the people that were there were hosting a dinner party for New Year's Eve. So we actually went to their place, hung out there. Then we went to another one of his friends' house for just a couple of hours grabbing drinks. And then we actually went back to the B&B, watched the ball drop, popped a bottle of champagne, and stayed up talking for a couple of hours. And then I went to bed.
On Monday, you definitely watched Wicked.
Yeah, no, I did.
Okay.
No, I'm talking. This is Tuesday. I'm talking about Tuesday.
Yeah, you did say that. Watch the ball drop. Yeah, I didn't watch any ball drop. I didn't really.
I watched it drop twice because I saw it drop in New England, and then I watched it drop in Denver.
Yeah, I didn't do any of that. I just literally watched Wicked. I think it turned. I sent you a text, and I think it turned midnight in
Denver.
Washington.
Oh yeah.
Right when Elphaba received her invite to.
Oh, no one mourns the wicked.
No one.
And then on New Year's Day, and this is what I was going to tell you earlier, we ended up going to this really cool, like, swanky restaurant that, like, it's called Champagne Tiger. And it's like they redid this diner and it's still got its like nice 70s diner vibe, but they like upgraded the menu, upgraded the sound system, upgraded the lights, all that stuff. There was this drag performer that was doing live singing. She just sang while we all ate and had mimosas. She didn't do like a drag show. It was actually like almost like a piano hour being hosted by a drag queen, which was awesome. I got duck confit and waffles.
You did tell me about that.
Oh my god, it was so good because I haven't
had a
had
little play on like chicken and waffles.
and I haven't had duck confit since I was in France, 3 years ago. So it was so good. And then we ended up going to a couple of other bars. And
your Europe trip was already 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't this last summer. It was the summer before that. So it's 2 years ago. Yeah. Yep. Time flies.
That's insane.
We're going on 3 years of going on almost 4 years of knowing each other.
No, 3. Because we met in 2022 when I started at. Yeah. That's what's really crazy to me.
If we met in 2022, we're in 2025. We're going on 3 years.
That's what I said. You said 4 years.
Oh, okay.
I said 3 years.
Sorry.
Well, but it was like late.
Yeah.
Because it was October of 2022. Yeah. But still, it's crazy thinking about time in like that. Like, oh, I've known this person for. The other day, I sent a picture to one of my friends that I like knew in Colorado, and he had painted like a little giraffe for me. I know you've seen it because it's on my wall. Yeah. But I like sent a picture and it has his little signature and a date, and it was 2014. Yeah. And I'm like, I have known him for 10 years. How is that possible when I didn't know him my whole, like, that's what's crazy to me. The friends that I met as an adult, I'm like, oh, I've known you for a decade. How am I old enough for that?
It's funny too. It's funny that you're 12. Saying this. I was just having this conversation with Mari, my best friend from Florida. We have known each other for 10 years now. Yeah. Because he's an ex-boyfriend of mine, but we broke up and became friends, and it's fine. But we ended up, one of our like second or third dates was to go see The Witch. And it came out in 2016. So we're going on knowing each other for 10 years. Yeah, it's all just like crazy. And mine, like, I've already been back July. I've already been back in the Pacific Northwest for 5 years. Been living on my own for 5 years. This and actually, like, the end of this month will mark... Living on my own by, like, no roommate. I haven't lived with my parents. So well, a couple months here and there. I haven't... The end of this month, beginning of the next month, will mark 3 years that I've lived here. Because I moved here in 2022. Yeah, one of the girls at work, because now... I moved here in February of 2022. Like, I used to, and we've talked about this, I used to be, when I used to serve and, like, bartend, I was the youngest. And now I'm one of the oldest, and so
seeing like the younger girls,
The youngins,
and they're like, oh my gosh, I just feel like this year flew by. And I'm like, just wait, the older you get.
I was watching Drag Race, and Michelle Visage says something to RuPaul. She's like, these kids are taking too many risks. Because they're doing like crazy death drops from like too high. And she's like, that looks like a meniscus surgery waiting to happen. And I'm like, girl.
No, and that's the thing too, is like one of the girls, I mean, we're not using names, fine. She's 19, but she was like talking about how her friends were coming over and they were gonna drink
until
wine
2 a.m.
stuff like that. And then she's like, oh my god, I could not do that. And just think about it, like, I would be so hungover the next day, and you're coming into work a double.
So Kelsey was kind enough. I made nachos basically for our brunch today because Kelsey's working tonight, and it's a nice, lovely Saturday, and we both had very busy schedules this week. So, she asked me what she could bring over, and I was like, "Ooh, bring like a bottle of rosé or bubble rosé because we haven't drank together in a while."
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was just like, oh, like nice little brunch, whatever, unless you don't want to drink, because I didn't know if she was working or not. And she's like, I'm not working. And I'm like, that's fine. Just get me a can. This is house wine.
I am working.
Sorry, you are working. I meant to say it that way. Which is one of my favorites. And the reason I asked you to grab me this, because typically I would have been like, just get me an iced tea. Yeah. But I was a little hungover this morning because I had 2 of these last night.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need something to kill it, because it's like body ache hungover. That's the worst part. Like, as we've gotten older, our hangovers are no longer just like, I have a headache and I'm nauseous. No, your bones ache because you're dehydrated.
Yeah, it's terrible. There was a lot of, and I think like I make comments, I'm like, yeah, when I was in my early 20s, I could do that too, because I forget too, because like,
I think it's also, like, to be fair, the aches, I think, are also due to the weather, because we're getting a lot of rain right now, but, like, which is
so
old. I'm only 36.
My knees can feel the weather.
No, for me, it's in my hips. I don't think any better. But it's funny, too, because it's like, I'm only 36.
Yeah, I feel like I
can't even imagine doing this again in my 20s. I don't want to. No.
I think maybe that's it too.
Someone asked me yesterday if I wanted to be a vampire, and I was like, I would have when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
Not now.
Well, I feel like it still depends on what kind of vampire. But anyway, I think it's also with COVID, because COVID happened now 5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah.
So I was 26.
2020, yeah.
So it's like, that's when you start, but because, at least this is what I'm telling myself and what I think, things kind of stopped.
Yep.
And so I feel like because we like stopped, we weren't as active, we weren't going and doing the things, we got like older faster.
Oh yeah, we aged quicker. It's the sedimentation or whatever it is, right? Like sedentary.
And I'm
or something
terrible.
Like that.
I was so much more active in Colorado, but again, Colorado has 300 days of sunshine, so.
Yeah. Same when I was living in Florida, like, and I've said this a couple of times, when I moved here in the end of January, beginning of February in 2022, and I remember like wanting to go out downtown, but because the sun goes down at 4 here, everything closes. So it was like 6 o'clock.
4 is a little dramatic.
I don't think so, because when you live in Florida, just so you know, like the sun doesn't go down until like 9. And it's because there's no...
In the summer?
No, it's summer all the time there. And it's because it's just about it's flat. So there's no like mountains and stuff like that obscuring the sun. And that's what I mean. I know sundown's not till actually like 7, but it starts getting dark.
Actually,
here.
sunset's literally at 4:49. That's closer to 5.
Oh.
That's just when it starts to set.
But it starts getting dark here.
Well, especially
really
because it's
early.
gloomy, so like you can't always.
And Portland's it's a very sleepy city. So I'm like,
we had a pretty good winters.
Honestly, we didn't get snow until April last year, or like April the first year I moved here. So
it hasn't been as gloomy.
Yeah, no, but it's just the beginning though. Like, I feel like it. Like
no, it's usually gloomy starting like mid-October.
I think that I feel like we're gonna, because of climate change, we're probably not gonna get it though until February, and then it's gonna last closer to like June.
It's warmer because of how devastating.
So I have friends that live like 5 miles from it. So we're talking about the fires going on in SoCal right now. We have I mean, most of my friends, actually all my friends from my video game world, except for one person, lives on the West Coast, and they, aside from 2 of us, they all live in California. Yeah. So, oh no, two people don't live here. Eric and Jordan live. Jordan lives in Denver, and then Eric, I don't remember exactly where he lives, but he lives where Brandon's family's from. But anyway, it's just the bulk of us. There's 4 of us living in SoCal right now, and 2 of them are actually really close to the fires. And I didn't actually know about I was telling you earlier, I haven't been on the phone or anything like that for all week, and then I didn't realize that the fires were even happening until I saw someone post something about it, and I was like, "Thick," but yeah,
it's sad.
It is. It's a lot.
Ugh, and it's disgusting with the insurance company.
Can you tell that we're trying to not talk about this book? It's called Stalling, guys. I also didn't. So let's just get into it.
Yeah,
and
let's just
through it.
Get it over with.
So I didn't do, because first of all, this book was a quick read for me. I read half of it on Thursday and the other half of it, half of it on Thursday and the other half of it on today.
I read Thursday and Friday too.
Yeah, it was just a quick read. It was
Honestly,
actually not a hard read.
I don't really like this book so far. I'm like, oh, yeah, I hadn't started it. And then I started it. I was like, oh.
Yeah. I tried to, so I took it with me to Denver. I read 1 chapter while I was in Denver. Yeah. And then I read another chapter. And then I was like, I can't even get into this right now.
Yeah. Well, and for me, the start of the book was harder because I feel like
So when
surprise, he was like falling in love. He respected her more and stopped treating her like property. Shit. And that was really what was terrible for me.
I didn't break this book down chapter by chapter as a review. I just did a bulk review of the first 25 chapters. And then I did another bulk review of the second half of the book.
Yeah, we can just read our
And we'll just go through our notes and converse through that.
I don't have that many for 25.
So, Hooked by Emily McIntire is a dark contemporary romance that reimagines elements from the classic Peter Pan tale. The story centers on James Bear, known as Hook, who seeks revenge against Peter Michaels, the man responsible for his parents' deaths. James' plan involves using Peter's daughter, Wendy, as a pawn. However, as he becomes closer to Wendy, he finds himself genuinely falling for her, complicating his desire for vengeance. In the first 25 chapters, the narrative unfolds as follows. Wendy's relocation. She moves to Bloomsburg, Massachusetts, to be near her estranged father, Peter, and her brother, John. Peter's preoccupation with the airline business, Never Air Land Airlines, has created a distance between him and his children. Wendy meets Hook. She encounters James Bear, a mysterious and dangerous man known as Hook. Despite warnings and the jealousy of her others, Wendy is drawn to him, and they begin an intense romantic relationship. Lots of sex. This book had a lot of sex, and a lot of graphic sex, mind you. James's revenge plot. Unbeknownst to Wendy, James is using their relationship to get closer to her father, Peter, whom he holds responsible for his parents' death in a plane crash years earlier. James' past is marked by trauma, including abuse from his uncle, Senator Bear, known in the crime world as Croc.
I read it Barry the whole time.
It could be that. I'm just saying. It's Barrie. Barrier, actually, because Perrier is spelled closely the same, isn't it? Anyway, Wendy's growing suspicion. As their relationship deepens, Wendy begins to notice inconsistencies and secrets, leading her to question James's true intentions. The tension between her loyalty to her family and her feelings for James intensifies. And then in the first 25 chapters builds up to this pivotal moment where James' plans and feelings collide, forcing both him and Wendy to confront the realities of their relationship and the dark pasts that haunt them. These chapters set the stage for a complex tale of love, betrayal, and the blurred lines between hero and villain. See, when we first started reading this, I was hoping for something that was along the lines of like Maleficent, right? Where it was a reimagining where you actually end up liking the villain.
I mean, I knew as soon as I read that, because let's just read what it actually says.
There's a disclaimer at the beginning of the book.
Hooked is a dark contemporary romance. It's an adult fractured fairy tale. It is in all bold. I don't know if you can't see that.
You can't see that.
It is not fantasy or a retelling. The main character is a villain. If you're looking for a safe read with redemption and a bad guy turned into a hero, you will not find it in these pages. I don't feel like I need to read that.
And then there's a disclaimer about sexually explicit stuff and kind of like trauma response stuff. So
yeah, and it's like you can go through. Okay.
Do you want to go first or should I go first?
Yeah. So because I only have a couple let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for notes before chapter for 17. But the reason why I didn't is because like you can be a villain. There are stories out there where the main character is because obviously he's like in the mob.
Yeah.
And like it makes it work. But the talking about even the like fake dating the daughter to get back at the dad none of that was my problem. The killing wasn't my issue.
No, none of that was an issue.
It was talking about Wendy as if she was property.
Yep.
That is what I just couldn't get over. Calling her his pet, that nobody can touch what's mine.
Master,
the master comes later,
but
true,
like that does come later.
Still, it's like I don't want people touching what I own, and until
I always get what I want, and I was just like, I roll. I'm
like, every time it comes to that, I just can't.
Honestly,
I can't do it. Everything else didn't bother me, but that it was so hard for me.
Yeah. When I got and I know that we're not going to discuss it much in this episode, but towards the end of the book, I was kind of really thinking more along the lines of, yeah, he's a terrible person. I totally get that. But I imagine that this would be like the origin story for a lot of strong female characters that we see in stuff like Scarface or in those kinds of instances where there is a strong female character that she started off somewhere.
Yeah.
And they don't all necessarily have to be people that were also in the mob. They could just be innocent bystanders or innocent affiliations to somebody that end up falling for the wrong guy. And I mean, their love story is still valid. They're still in love. Like that's a thing. And that's kind of when we got to the end of the book, that's where I kind of put my head on this. I was like, yes, he's a terrible person. Yes, he's god awful and he kills people for fun.
Yeah. But we know that from the beginning of the book, and like that's not the part that. But
even before that, like just the fact that it's a retelling of the fairy tale that we know, and Hook is the villain in that, so we already knew what was going to happen going into.
And that was the thing. I'm like, you can be a villain without like talking about.
Yeah, you can be a villain towards other people, but the female characters in your life that and the way that he treated that one chick, Moira.
Yeah.
I'm like. Ugh.
Yeah, there's a lot.
He's basically watching porn while getting a blowjob.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
He's not even watching porn. He's watching her on the
he's watching her,
cam.
but it's his version of porn.
Yeah. Okay, so these are my few notes. My predictions, really. Chapter 17, I was already... John isn't Michael's real son. Mm-hmm. Maybe John is actually both Wendy and James's half-brother. Because that was obvious.
100%.
In my eyes. That
100%.
Very obvious.
I don't remember when I said it, but I have the same.
Yeah. Chapter 22... James says John and Wendy don't look alike. So that was just another, I'm like, so obviously. Mm-hmm. Also, chapter 22, I think Rufus is about to die at this meeting because that was also very obvious.
Very obvious.
Chapter 24, and now James saying...
You have nothing before chapter 22?
Before 17, no.
Oh, okay.
I
went into this very presumptuous, and like I said earlier, you'll be able to tell when my tone changes.
Yeah. And then 24, it was just another thing saying like, and now James saying, I'm not sure why I feel such kinship with him.
Yeah.
They're totally brothers. And then 25. Wow. He didn't even try to talk to her about things. He just went straight to kidnapping.
Off the handle. Yeah.
He was like straight up was like, not going to actually ask any questions whatsoever.
So I even have notes for the prologue.
Okay.
For the prologue, I put, who is this uncle? And I wonder how it will be tie back to the original story. Because at that point, I hadn't realized that he was Croc.
Right.
Chapter 1. I'm already loving the name association blending. Like Never Airland is the name of the Peters airline.
I did like all of their little like Tina Bell.
Yeah.
Like all. I did. That was cute. All of that. I
enjoy the fact that it's based out of New England. It helps me paint a more accurate picture in my head of what the scene calls for because I grew up there. So I was like, oh, okay, like a little fisherman town. It's like Portsmouth or anything like that. Got it. I'm kind of over the innocent girl turns bad trope. Why can't not so innocent characters be the main storyline for a book? Is it so hard to write a character with normal everyday experiences who has the same other drastic or has some other drastic change? Because they set this, and this is going back to what I said earlier, where it's like a B-rated movie, and you're like, okay.
It's always the virginal
the virginal maiden who ends up turning a little bad and all this stuff. And I'm like, can't we just have, like, me? Like, I want to see me doing this. Like, oh, I'm bumping into this person. I'm not definitely not virginal. And I am not some pure little innocent thing. Like, I've done some fucked up shit.
Well, and there's a lot of things that happen that are like, if this happened in real life, and I think that's what's different too, is like we came from a fantasy world where like it is different to this is like the real world. I'm like, if this was the real world, there's no way I would be doing like
any of it.
If a man that I just bumped into and then showed up at my work,
stalker
was like, I'm gonna take her on a first date to my boat. No.
No. And this is how I die.
Yeah.
I've noticed that the modern romance novels have started changing the age of their female characters to 20 or 21 instead of 16 or 18.
Thank God.
Yeah, I was like, that was like points. You get points for that because I'm sick of like.
It's not a huge age gap.
No,
they're like 5-6
they're only like
apart.
5 or 6 years apart.
And I did notice that as well. I was like, okay, this
because
is a plus.
he even mentions that
There
they met when they were children.
Yeah, when he was like 5 and she was a baby.
Well, no, she was old enough to be walking because her mom was holding John and holding her hand. That's what he says in the recollection.
Oh, why did I read that?
No, you thought that she was the baby. She was holding her brother. Her mom was holding John and holding her hand.
I definitely read it. I didn't read the holding hand part. I just read the baby part.
Chapter 2, not a fan of the mob boss.
Duh, because John had to be alive. Because the whole, God,
Not a fan of the mob boss situation, but we'll see where this goes, because that's when I started. I was like, oh, here we go. And this is again where you can tell my tone changes. So chapter 3. I hope this isn't a possessive aggressive 50 Shades of Grey kind of deal.
I was actually talking about this book to one of my regulars. I'm like, it's really hard to get through because of this. And she brought up 50 Shades. She's like, I started reading, but it was the same thing. Like, it's just it's
chapter
hard
4.
to get through.
We're already getting 4 chapters in a span of 22 pages, which seems a bit excessive, but we'll see where it goes. And then I was like, oh, it's going to be an aggressive side of sex. And then I was like, is this how women think men think? Though I'm not straight, and I know in some scenarios it is true. Is it possible this overly exaggerated, aggressive, dominant male is a misconception? In order for a man to be a man of power, they have to be aggressive and greedy, especially with sex, and especially with women. I'm glad Reese wasn't portrayed this way. Yes,
but I mean, look at our society. Look who's in power right now or about to be.
And that's the thing that's just like, I feel like, and I could be wrong, I'm doing a lot of generalization right now too, so let's be fair with that. But I feel like a lot of the times when it comes to books like this, it's the same character traits every single time. I think the reason I liked and enjoyed ACOTAR series is because there was much more character depth in the characters. Absolutely. And it wasn't just the general, like, I feel like this is the kind of situation, great example. If you've ever watched the TV series Chernobyl, which was on HBO, they make a disclaimer at the end of the series, which is like a limited series, and it's just talking about it's a retelling and dramatization of what happened with the Chernobyl meltdown back in the 80s. At the very end of it, which is actually all based off of a book, mind you. At the very end of it, there's a disclaimer, and it says that the character that is portrayed by one of the female leads is actually an amalgamation of the entire... Sorry, amalgamation?
Yep.
It's just... sorry, I'll use a different word.
I could think probably with context clues, but like, let's...
This character was just
like a combination
of many different scientists placed into one character so that we could focus on one person. And I feel like what happens with these kinds of books is that's what happens. They're like, we're going to take a generalization of all powerful men and put them into one character. So you can just switch Hook with any Dorian Gray. You can switch it with like anybody because it's all the same character traits. Yeah. And it's just, Tamlin. Yeah. It's all the same character traits.
It's unfortunate because I feel like that's just what our society does.
I'm going to need to read this because my last note for chapter 4 says the way I grimaced at the last couple of lines of this chapter. Yeah, he's been sucking on something. 8, 7, 6.
Yeah, it's just... We need more. I feel like, and that's why so many people like the Rezans, like the Cassians. Oh no.
And until I decide otherwise,
Yep.
Wendy Michaels is mine. I was like, "Bleh."
And it's like, I don't have a problem with people being like, oh, you're mine in like a cute way.
In a
but
cute
that
way.
was a possessive
It was
ownership
very
way.
possessive. Like,
Yeah.
Chapter 5. I'm truly hoping Emily doesn't make me hate James and that there is some better internal monologue or character growth. And that was me reading it much later on, forgetting about the disclaimer in the beginning. To be honest, if a guy kept calling someone darling, I would think he was gay too. She asks Maria if he is at one point. Like, if someone kept on being like, oh, darling, and I'd be like, are you family?
See, and I read it in like a
Darling. Yeah.
So
like,
I never got it that way.
darling. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was a very, it was, well, but yeah. That's how
Yeah.
I was picturing it. So.
Chapter 6. It's taking a lot for me not to write negatively about this book. This book feels like a B-rated horror movie. Good ideas, but no character development. No more notes until chapter 12.
Yeah.
Here's the first person to like me for me and not my dad. Oh, honey. Because she says that. She's like, he's the first person to like me for me. And we're all like, you're being played, boo.
You're being very much played.
And I said, Wendy not telling John about the boarding school is going to bite her in the ass, I feel like. And it did.
It did, but didn't.
Kind of did. And then chapter 14, of course she's a virgin.
Yeah. Always. Hi.
I'm just trying not to interrupt.
You're fine.
And then there's me.
Chapter 22, I bet John is James's brother, and that's why Peter killed James's family, father/family.
Yeah, when I was like, oh, this is why, I'm like, oh, yeah,
Yep.
and that's why the mom was dead. Everyone's dead because of this.
Yep. Chapter 23, betting Peter kills Rue while James is with Wendy, dropping John off at the horrible school.
What? Oh, yeah.
Chapter 25, James is an idiot for thinking Wendy was in on it. And then I said, it's annoying to me that we were given this character, Hook, who is supposed to be calculated and restrained, waiting 15 or whatever years to complete his plan. And now he's kind of manic and sloppy. I would have thought he would have had done some investigation, maybe even use his connections with Wendy to plot out things more instead of rushing to conclusion and instantly abducting Wendy and presuming her guilt.
And that's what I said with you, literally, not even like some hints of things.
No.
Like if you're that perceptive,
yeah, and
you'll be able to figure it out. Because he found it out in like one
interaction between her and her father. But the thing that's like even
you didn't even ask, hey, how's your relationship with your dad?
Yeah, no, he played it off like he didn't know who she was.
Yeah.
It's just this book was a tricky read, but that was the first 25 chapters. As you can see, we both have glowing reviews for it. The next episode is only going to be as glowing, if not more.
Honestly, though, I was better with the book in the back half than I was in the front half because he stops, like, referring to her as property.
Which is the opposite for me. I think for me, it was just like, it only got worse for me. Like,
I mean, it was very predictable and, like, all of that, but I watch Hallmark movies, so I can't be mad about, like, predictability.
Oh, man. So, this is going to be the end of this episode. We're about to record another one, so we're going to just breeze right along, but if you have any predictions before you read the second half of the book, or if you haven't read the book yet, feel free to take a look. I know that we're not giving it a great review, so
we've also given some stuff away, so sorry about it.
Yeah, my suggestion would be to feel free to get it from the library, so you're not spending money on it.
Sorry, Emily.
Sorry, Emily. It's just But
look, people were raving about this book on TikTok, and I'm like,
and honestly,
how?
like, good. Listen.
I'm not trying to yuck people's yum.
No,
but
not at all.
Kind of.
It's just, I think it's just, this was not for me. This one was not for me. And I'm sure it's good for other people. And I mean, we're probably going to get some hate comments for us not liking it, which, that's the thing. The whole concept of this book club was for us to just find books. I mean, there's bound to be a book that we both read that one of us hates, but the other one loves. So
yeah,
just the whole point of this is to have conversations. And if you have input or you disagree with us in some way, shape, or form, feel free to leave us a comment, but be respectful. We're not telling you that you're dumb or stupid or anything like that, so please don't say it to us. But if there's something that we might have said that you're like, I didn't think of it that way, or you have a different perspective on it, or something else that you'd like to include to the conversation, let us know. I would love to hear someone try and talk me into liking this.
Defend this book.
Defend the book to me.
See it, because I think, like I said, my biggest problem, I would have liked this book if it wasn't for the my pet, I own. That's not for me. That won't ever be for me. I also it's like I don't have that like praise kink that's
Yeah.
like good girl.
Yeah,
do
I
what
don't like that either.
say.
Honestly, you want to help?
Tell me what to do and see what happens.
This is how vanilla I am. Don't talk. I don't want to hear anything. I mean, if you make
I
noises,
have little talking here and there, but
I don't
it's
need any of
the
it.
like.
don't ask me to call you something, to tell you something, to remind you of something. Trust me,
like
my
telling
face subtitles alone will tell you if you're doing a good job.
Tell me what you like, I'll tell you what I like.
And let's
that
go
kind
from there.
of communication. But the be a good girl and petting her and all of that, I'm like,
You're so wet for me. Whoa.
that's,
Ma'am.
You know what? That's not an uncommon thing.
No, I've seen straight porn, I'm aware.
Just saying.
I've had guys say something similar, and
A
I'm
lot
like,
of the things he said too, like just.
especially in the second half of the book. The second half of the book gets a little bit more graphic with the sex scenes, and there's definitely one point where he's just
There
like,
is some. There
calls her a
definitely
slut, and she's just like, I kind of liked it though, and I'm like, are you okay?
It's like a lot that I'm like.
Yeah.
That would be it.
I'm letting you know I didn't read either one of it.
it.
Your vagina puckered. Just
No, thank you.
Clam has closed up shop.
All right. Anyways.
So this is it for chapters 1 through 25 of Hooked, a Nevermore or Never After series that I will never read again.
I may try out one of the like female
It's all you, boo.
villains and see if I like it better. Because like I said, my biggest was just like the ownership and all of it. Just squeezed me out.
With that, I'm Brad.
And I'm Kelsey.
And we're BK Book Club.
Whoop, whoop.